You lose. Fake news. President Donald Trump was victorious in court against the AP, the Associated Press. The Associated Press lost their access to the White House press briefing room. They lost their access to Air Force One. They lost their access to Donald Trump's impromptu little press conferences that he does at the end of his executive order signings in the Oval Office. And the AP lost all of that access because they refused. They refused to, I guess you would say, admit or to recognize that Donald Trump had officially changed, per his executive order, the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Donald Trump said, you're peddling fake news. You're reporting things that aren't true. You're not referring to things as they should be rightly be called. And unless you plan on honoring or accepting the fact that I'm the president and my executive order says this body of water is now referred to as the Gulf of America, then you're not going to have any place in the White House press areas, including Air Force One and the Oval Office, because we only want accurate reporting here. And they immediately sued Donald Trump. But yesterday, a judge sided with the Trump administration, upholding his right to block the AP. A judge on Monday rejected the Associated Press's emergency motion to rescind the White House ban against its access to some press events as he sought more details on the circumstances surrounding the case. It's a win for the White House as they seek to restrict the AP's access following the news organization's decision to use Gulf of Mexico rather than Gulf of America. The judge, a guy by the name of Trevor McFadden, said he didn't find any reason to immediately stop the administration's ban, but said that case law seems to be against it. He did say that the White House does not have to guarantee access to the president to any news organization, and that news organizations could actually cover the president without being in the same room with him. The White House immediately responded with a statement on White House victory against the Associated Press. They said, quote, "As we have said from the beginning, asking the President of the United States questions in the Oval Office and aboard Air Force One is a privilege granted to journalists, not a legal right. We stand by our decision to hold the fake news accountable for their lies, and President Trump will continue to grant an unprecedented level of access to the press." And that is an interesting thing that people need to realize. President Donald Trump does give an incredible amount of access to the media. They are allowed to talk to him on the tarmac before he gets on a plane. They're allowed to talk to him on the plane when he's flying around the world. They are allowed to talk to him in the Oval Office while he's doing his work. They're allowed to talk to him whenever he wanders into the press briefing room or when he's in the East Room with a dignitary like he was yesterday. Donald Trump has done more press events and answered more press questions in the first month and 1 week of his administration than I think any president in all of history. So that must really burn the AP, knowing that everybody else is getting more access than they've ever had before, and they're getting none. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had a statement about this. She was asked about it, and she said, yes, people need to realize, again, in the media, that this is a privilege and not a God-given right.
And the winning continues here at the White House every day. Today, a federal judge right here in Washington, D.C., denied the Associated Press's emergency request for a temporary restraining order to restore their privilege of returning to the White House press pool. And the judge's denial of the Associated Press's request reinforces what I said from the podium last week and what President Trump has been saying. Covering the American presidency and the most intimate and limited spaces in this White House, in the Oval Office, on the Air Force One, is a privilege. It is not a legal right. And we want all voices to have that opportunity. And that's why we've expanded the James S. Brady briefing room to invite truly legitimate, independent journalists, podcasters, and other media types into that room to cover this president with honesty and accuracy and with real mindfulness of what the American people actually care about.
There you go. Mindfulness about what the American people actually care about. BT Dubs, Caroline, I'm still waiting for my invitation into the James S. Brady press room so that I can answer a question or ask a question rather and get an answer for my podcast. Hit me up. In the meantime, Donald Trump is preparing for the next White House press briefing, with just a couple of reminders as to who's in charge and what's going on here. Apparently, in the White House press briefing room, they've hung up signs that say Gulf of America with large stamps that say victory. So we will be looking forward. Of course, to the next press briefing, as we look forward to all press briefings. And speaking of Donald Trump giving unfettered access to the media, he did meet yesterday with President Emmanuel Macron of France. The President Macron was at the White House to meet with President Trump and discuss the situation in Ukraine. Well, they held a, that hurts my throat when I talk like a French person, when they were doing a live phone call for the G7 summit, which was convened in an emergency session to discuss Ukraine and, of course, all of the things surrounding Ukraine. And French President Emmanuel Macron was asked about Ukraine and whether or not he thought that Donald Trump could bring the world back to peace. Here's what he said.
Over the past few hours, and as you mentioned this, Mr. President, we've been able to see a few things take shape. First of all, allow me to commend you on your decision to work with President Zelensky and to conclude this agreement that's so important for the U.S. and Ukraine on rare earths, critical minerals, but also having substantive conversations with President Zelensky during this key phase of achieving this deal, which is a major commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, and I think that's very commendable. We also have a shared desire to build peace.
That, of course, wasn't Emmanuel Macron's voice. That was his interpreter. And it always throws me off a little bit. It always throws me off a little bit when they have like an interpreter of the opposite sex. For example, if it's a male president, you would think you would want a strong male voice to interpret for him. But they got a woman. And on the flip side, if it's a woman, you would think you would want a feminine voice as well. So it would give a more accurate depiction. That's just my personal take. That's just my personal pet peeve on interpreters. But, you know, I guess in this situation, maybe that's all they could. Maybe it was last minute. Maybe that's all they could get. Or maybe Emmanuel Macron is just the kind of guy that likes to sound like a woman. Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron have a very interesting relationship. It's not one of those relationships where President Macron seems to fear President Donald Trump. And they are a little more, let's just say, giddy and touchy-feely and a little more. There seems to be like a battle of testosterone back and forth. Nobody wants to be treated like the beta in this relationship, and it comes across. And Donald Trump even shared a story about the last time he saw Emmanuel Macron, or one of the last times he saw him, in France when he visited with the First Lady Melania.
I just want to tell you a little story. So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking the French deal. And we didn't have an interpreter, and he was going on and on and on, and I was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. And he really sold me out, because I got back the next day and I read the papers. I said, that's not what we said. He's a smart customer, I will tell you that. Sure. That wasn't exactly what we agreed to.
Yeah, it's one of those bro love-hate relationships between those two, but it seems to work out pretty well, and they had a pretty decent time. And Donald Trump answered a lot of questions again from the media, because that's what Donald Trump does. He takes questions from the press whenever they tend, you know, they have an opportunity to ask. And one of the big questions, of course, was about Ukraine. And did Donald Trump think this war could end? Had he spoken with Vladimir Putin? Was he going to meet with Volodymyr Zelensky? And the answer to all those questions is, well, yes. Donald Trump does believe the war could end. Donald Trump is going to meet with Volodymyr Zelensky, and he has spoken with Vladimir Putin. In fact, it was one of the first phone calls he made when he returned to the White House.
I mean, that's what I do. I do deals. My whole life is deals. That's all I know is deals. And I know when somebody wants to make it and when somebody doesn't. I will say this, before I came here, there was no communication with Russia whatsoever, and Russia wasn't answering calls. They were not talking to anybody. They wouldn't talk to anybody, and people sort of accepted that as being that they want to go forward and just keep going without stop. But when I got here, one of the first calls I made was to President Putin, and we were treated with great respect, and they want to end this war. So that's a big thing, because I didn't know if I could say that, but it's a big thing. They want to do it, and the group in the front row that I introduced, they're all very active in it, and we're working on deals right now, transactions right now, and in particular, the big one is to get the war stopped, whether it's ceasefire or direct to an agreement. I'd like to go directly to an agreement, but ceasefire will always happen a little bit quicker. And every day you're saving thousands, or at least hundreds, but thousands in some cases lives. So we want to see if we can get that done.
And And President Donald Trump said, not only am I speaking with Vladimir Putin, but we're speaking with Vladimir Zelensky, and Zelensky may actually come here to the United States for ongoing discussions about ending the war. And Donald Trump says, hopefully, to sign the agreement that would give the United States a share of its minerals and its precious metals, and also offer security to Vladimir Zelensky's people in Ukraine.
I will be meeting with President Zelensky. In fact, he may come in this week or next week to sign the agreement, and which would be nice. I'd love to meet him. Would meet at the Oval Office. So the agreement's being worked on now. They're very close to a final deal. It'll be a deal with rare earths and various other things, and he would like to come, as I understand it, here to sign it, and that would be great with me. I think they then have to get it approved by their council or whoever might approve it, but I'm sure that will happen.
And Donald Trump was asked flat out, how long will this war go on? Could this war actually end? Here was his reply.
I think the war could end soon.
Well, how soon?
Within weeks.
Weeks?
Yeah, I think so. Right? Don't you think so? I'd like to have you. I think we could end it within weeks if we're smart. If we're not smart, it'll keep going, and we'll keep losing young, beautiful people that shouldn't be dying. And we don't want that. And remember what I said. This could escalate into a third world war. And we don't want that either.
Well, some people in Congress may want that because they're going to see their stock portfolios explode. Some people in the Senate, too. I won't name any names, but I'm pretty sure you know exactly who I'm talking about. And then Donald Trump was asked, how close really are we? And he spoke with Scott Bessent, who is the Treasury Secretary and has been a very notable negotiator. Again, Donald Trump has a very interesting tactic. When he arranged his cabinet, or when he assembled his cabinet, he didn't just look for somebody to lead the Treasury Department who's good with money. He didn't just look for somebody to lead the Commerce Department who's good with business. He didn't just look for somebody to run DOD who's solid with defense. He looked for a group of people who have multiple skill sets, who really could be plugged into any one of these positions, and who can work in tandem with each other at fixing these issues and these problems. So while Secretary of State Marco Rubio is meeting with Vladimir Putin and the Russian officials in Riyadh, you've got Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, meeting in Kyiv with Vladimir Zelensky. And Donald Trump asked Scott Bessent, right off the cuff, how close are we? Here's how that broke down.
It looks like we're getting very close. The deal's being worked on, and we're, I think, getting very close to getting an agreement where we get our money back over a period of time. But it also gives us something where I think it's very beneficial to their economy, to them as a country. But we're in for $350 billion. How we got there, I don't know, but that's a lot of money, a lot of money invested, and we had nothing to show for it. And it was the Biden administration's fault. The Europeans are in for about $100 billion, and they do it in the form of a loan. And the Europeans have been great on this issue. They understood it wasn't fair, and we were able to work something out. But with the Ukrainians, I think I can say that we're very close. Scott's around here someplace, and I think we can say that we're very hi, Scott. I think we're very close. Do you have something to say about that, Scott?
We are very close.
Good.
1 yard line.
All right, good.
There you go. 1 yard. How close are we, Scott? 1 yard line, Mr. President. Fantastic. Great. All we need to do then, you know what we need? You know what the Philadelphia Eagles would do? A little bit of a tush push. That's the perfect place for a tush push. By the way, speaking of the Philadelphia Eagles, there was a fake news story, go figure, going around that the Philadelphia Eagles, the championship, the Super Bowl champs, were not going to be attending the celebration at the White House. They were not, they rescinded, or they turned down the offer to appear at the White House, as most Super Bowl champions do. That story was fake news, and it was reported by some fake news media outlet, and it was passed around the internet as fake news. Breitbart now reporting that the Philadelphia Eagles are, quote, honored to accept the visit to the White House after their Super Bowl win. Team sources for the Philadelphia Eagles revealed that they would be honored to accept an invitation to visit the White House after they won the Super Bowl, according to recent reports. In a post on X, NFL Network's Ian Rappaport wrote that the Eagles would be honored to visit the White House, adding that it was one of the aspects of winning they were excited about. Rappaport's post came after the White House confirmed that they had not yet invited the Eagles to the White House to celebrate their win with President Trump after reports swirled that the team would not accept an invitation. The Eagles would be honored to visit the White House, team sources say. Rappaport wrote in his post, "It's one of the aspects of winning they're excited about and look forward to receiving the invitation if and when it comes." And then they can teach Scott Bessent how to do that tush push so he can push Volodymyr Zelensky right into the end zone and end this dreaded war. There were a couple of other questions that Donald Trump answered about Doge, because whenever the media gets together with the president, they can't ignore Doge. They can't ignore the cuts. They can't ignore Elon Musk and Elon Musk's effect on the United States government and how and his cost-cutting initiatives. And so Donald Trump took a couple of questions about Doge. One of them was about the email that was sent out by Elon Musk over the weekend, and that was an email that stated, "What did you do last week? Please reply to this email by Monday with 5 bullet points of things you accomplished next week. CC your manager. If you do not, if you do not reply to the email, we will take that as your resignation." A couple of departments like the DOD and the FBI responded to that email saying, "Hey, this doesn't apply to you." And many people in the fake media thought that it showed contention and consternation between Elon Musk and some of these other department heads, including the newly appointed director of the FBI, Kash Patel, and Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. That's not at all the case. And President Donald Trump explained that to the media.
No. That was done in a friendly manner. Only things such as perhaps Marco at State Department, where they have very confidential things, or the FBI, where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them tell you what they're working on last week. But other than that, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
That holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too. So, we're doing a real job. And we just had a poll come out, I guess the Harvard poll, saying that it's massively popular what we're doing.
It is massively popular, according to the Harvard poll. And President Donald Trump was asked about that Harvard poll as well, which he said, "Look, I'm shocked, but also honored by the results."
Well, I was honored by it. It was a big poll, and it's usually a poll that leans on the other side of things, the other side of the world, so to speak. But the Harvard poll is a respected poll, and it has us not only leading, but leading by a lot, and leading on every single issue that we've talked about. And as I said, we've become the party of common sense. And I think that's a very important element now, common sense, because what's happening in the world and even in this country, some of the things that took place, many of them are now canceled, and the rest are being canceled as we speak. But we've moved very rapidly and I think very effectively. So I was honored by that poll. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very much appreciative of the Harvard poll that shows Americans approve of what Donald Trump's doing. Speaking of approval, Vivek Ramaswamy has announced that he will be running for the governor of Ohio. Vivek Ramaswamy supported Donald Trump in his second campaign, and also for a brief time worked with Elon Musk at Doge until he decided he would much rather run for politics in Ohio and lead his home state as the governor. And yesterday, Donald Trump threw his weight behind him, saying Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor of the great state of Ohio. I know him well, competed against him, and he is something special. He's young, strong, and smart. Vivek is also a very good person who truly loves our country. He will be a great governor of Ohio, will never let you down, and has my complete and total endorsement. That should narrow the field for anyone else who was thinking of perhaps throwing their hat in the ring for Ohio governor. Listen, we've got a lot more stuff that we've got to talk about today on the show. And we've got, of course, a second daily podcast, Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. So if you enjoyed what you heard today and you'd like to hear more of it, we do interviews, we do extended analysis and commentary. We have a lot of fun, and it happens every single day at noon on Rumble, on YouTube, on X. We live stream pretty much anywhere you can live stream. Plus, we have a podcast that you can download and listen to at your leisure whenever it's convenient for you. Go to Spotify, go to iTunes, search for Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, download, listen, and enjoy.